I'm Howard Phillips Lovecraft, and today's question comes to us from Will, who wants to know my thoughts on the children's fantasy adventure film, The Dark Crystal. Now, The Dark Crystal was put out by Jim Henson, and what it was noted for at the time was how the entire film featured performances solely from puppets and animatronics. Now, this should not be confused with Mr. Henson's future project, The Labyrinth, which, while making a great deal of use of puppets and animatronics, also had a few human and at least one extraterrestrial performance. What I find truly remarkable about this, however, is how absolutely stunningly creative and unique it is. They were not drawing upon the well of nostalgia to produce this, but instead were creating something from whole cloth. This was no television series or comic book or breakfast cereal before it came into being. Instead, its inspirations come from rather interesting sources. The first was the work of Brian Froud, an artist who created these delightful illustrations of fairies and goblins that were all rather charming, but also a touch sinister. The other inspiration was the works of Jane Roberts, specifically what's known as the Seth material. Miss Roberts claimed to be able to channel this non-corporeal entity known as Seth, and between the two of them they came up with all sorts of ideas that were very influential in the New Age movement, particularly ideas about sort of the Manichaean relationship between matter and spiritualism, and also this idea that one creates one's own reality, which apparently was very appealing to Mr. Henson. Now that's not to say that this whole film is some sort of New Age indoctrination tool, but rather that Mr. Henson and Mr. Oz were able to take these inspirations and package them for their target audience, children. They never lost sight that they were creating a film for children. And now, this is a movie that is filled with genocide and torture and mind control and slavery, and yet it's still ultimately a children's film. And I think the reason it works is because Mr. Henson and Mr. Oz do not underestimate their audience. They realize that children have sophisticated palates. When children watch something, they're not second-guessing themselves. They experience it in a very raw way that as adults we lose sight of. They're asking themselves, did that delight? Did that terrify? There's no question of, well, am I able to enjoy this in context of what's happening in current? No, it's simply raw experience. And that is something I would like to see us get back to more and more. Now, it has been pointed out to me that the company Netflix is planning on creating a new series based on the Dark Crystal, which again goes to that idea of constantly dipping back into the well of what's come before rather than seeking out the new and the cutting edge. And I do hope it winds up being a good production, and I'm sure the people working on it will do their utmost, but there's just something about the scope and the ambition of this that's just never been replicated. Except, of course, in Meet the Feebles, but we'll save that for another episode. As always, I'm Howard Phillips Lovecraft. Thank you.